My name is Arlo Pierce. I'm 82 years old, and I live alone in a faded single-story house on the south edge of St. Louis, Missouri. The neighborhood has changed since my wife Marlene passed away. More unfamiliar cars on the street, more strangers walking their dogs with earbuds in, not one of them ever offering a nod or a greeting. It used to be quiet here, but now there's noise at night, cars blaring music, kids on scooters darting across my lawn, and sometimes I lie in bed and wonder whether the world has moved on without me. My wife used to call our home our little island, and since her death 5 years ago, I've come to understand just how right she was. We were an island, the two of us, apart from the rushing tide of time. But when she left, the sea came in, and now it's just me, surrounded by memories and silence. My days follow the same careful pattern. I wake up to the sound of the kitchen clock ticking, make coffee slowly, one scoop too strong since I never quite mastered Marlene's gentle touch, then sit by the window and watch the early joggers pass. Breakfast is always the same: toast, an egg if I feel ambitious, and orange juice that tastes more bitter than it used to. I read the paper front to back, even though most of the headlines depress me, and I always clip the crossword, which I start but rarely finish. My body's not what it used to be. The hip never fully healed after the fall I had 2 winters ago when I slipped on the icy driveway while trying to retrieve the trash bin. That incident landed me in the hospital for 6 days and physical therapy for 8 weeks. Since then, I've used a cane, though I hate the thing. My vision has also deteriorated, macular degeneration, the doctor says, and I now need special lenses to read anything small. I don't drive anymore. Not since I accidentally bumped the mailbox pulling out of the driveway 2 summers back. My daughter, Elise, insisted it was time to hand over the keys. She said it gently, but I could feel the firm edge in her voice. She worries, I know, but we've grown distant over the years. I think she sees me more as a responsibility now than as her father. My only regular visitor is my grandson, Jake. 19, lanky, always half distracted by whatever is happening on his phone. He comes over maybe twice a month, often on weekends, and stays just long enough to eat the sandwich I make him and ask if I have any spare cash. I always give him a 20, sometimes a 50, if he looks particularly tired, or if he mentions something about gas prices or school expenses. Not that he's in school anymore. He dropped out of community college after 1 semester, said he wanted to build his own brand, whatever that means. He's a TikToker now, which, as far as I can tell, involves dancing in front of a camera and making faces at trending music. It seems ridiculous to me, but he has thousands of followers, and sometimes when he shows me one of his videos, I can't help but notice the likes and comments flying in like confetti. I remember when Jake was just a chubby-cheeked boy with a runny nose and a laugh like wind chimes. Marlene adored him. She would knit him little hats, and he'd throw them off with delight, giggling while she chased him around the yard. Back then, they used to come over for Sunday dinners, Elise, her husband Derek, and Jake. Those dinners stopped sometime after Marlene died. Elise said it was hard to come to the house with all the memories. I didn't argue. I never do. People grieve in their own ways, I suppose. But truthfully, I think they just didn't want to be reminded of the old man sitting alone in a house full of photographs. I try not to complain. I know many have it worse. I have a pension, the house is paid off, and my pantry is never empty. Still, there's a loneliness that seeps into the walls, into the rugs and the drapes, and even the ticking of that damn kitchen clock. Sometimes in the evenings, I pour myself a glass of whiskey, not doctor-approved, but it helps the ache in my bones, and sit in the living room with the television playing softly in the background. Old westerns mostly. I like the ones where the hero doesn't talk much, just does what needs to be done. Jake likes to mock my shows. He'll drop by, flop onto the couch, and say something like, "Gramps, why do you always watch this cowboy crap?" I laugh along, but it stings. He never asks me what I like about them. Never wants to hear about the time Marlene and I visited Santa Fe and watched the sunset over the Red Canyons. He's too busy filming, angling his phone toward his face, mouthing along to a song I've never heard. Last Sunday, he came over unexpectedly, said he wanted to make content, and asked if I'd be willing to help. It's a trend, he explained, where old people do things, and we add funny sound effects. I didn't understand half of it, but I agreed. I always agree. Maybe because I'm flattered he still wants to include me. Maybe because part of me believes that if I say yes enough times, he'll stay longer. I followed him out into the backyard, careful with my steps. He was already filming as I adjusted my cane and walked slowly toward the bench under the maple tree. He told me to walk a little faster, then suddenly shouted something I couldn't hear clearly. I turned my head, lost my balance, and slipped on a patch of uneven stone. It happened so fast. I went down hard on my side, the cane clattering away, pain shooting up from my ribs. I lay there stunned, the sky spinning above me. Jake rushed over, not to help, but to pick up his phone, which had fallen to the ground. He asked if I was okay, but his tone was distracted. I managed to sit up, breathless, humiliated. He handed me the cane and helped me back inside. That night, as I iced my hip and tried to sleep through the throbbing, I heard laughter, Jake's voice echoing from the guest room. He had stayed over, said he wanted to edit the video. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was just glad he was there. But something gnawed at me. The way he'd smiled when I fell. The way he kept rewinding the footage and chuckling under his breath. I told myself I was imagining things. That he was just a teenager. That I was lucky to have family at all. But deep down I knew something had shifted. Not in Jake, but in me. For the first time I felt not just old, but exposed. And I had no idea that what had happened that afternoon in the backyard would not only wound my body, but would strip bare every illusion I had left about love, loyalty, and the cost of being someone else's joke. It was the following afternoon when I first found out what had really happened. Jake had left early that morning, mumbling something about needing to upload before noon prime traffic. And I hadn't thought much of it. I'd made myself a pot of weak coffee and sat with the crossword, but I couldn't focus. My left side ached from the fall, and I winced every time I reached for the paper. I had told Jake to send me the video, thought maybe I could learn something from it, maybe even find it funny, lighten the mood. But he just said, yeah, it's not really your thing, and shrugged. I let it go. I always let things go. Around 3 p.m. the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I pulled on my slippers and shuffled to the door, moving slower than usual, muscles tight and uncooperative. When I opened it, I found my neighbor's teenage daughter standing there with a smirk on her face, and her phone held up. "Is it true?" she asked, not even greeting me. "Are you the falling grandpa?" I blinked at her, confused. "What are you talking about?" I said. She rolled her eyes like I was pretending not to know. "It's all over TikTok, like you have 1 million views. Jake posted it yesterday. Everyone's saying you did it on purpose." Then she laughed and walked off down the path before I could ask anything more. The words didn't land at first. 1 million views? Posted what? I went back inside and sat heavily in my recliner. My hands trembled a little as I picked up the remote. My old television doesn't get apps, but I had a tablet in the drawer. I hadn't used it in months. It took me 20 minutes to find the charger. Another 15 to remember the password. When the screen finally lit up, I opened the browser and typed Jake's name, then the word TikTok. The first link that came up had the title Epic Grandpa Fall, and the thumbnail was a freeze frame of my face mid-fall, mouth open, eyes wide. I clicked it. I've lived through a lot of things in my 82 years. War, layoffs, the death of my parents, burying my wife, but nothing prepared me for the experience of watching myself fall, again and again, set to circus music. The clip was no more than 15 seconds long. It started with Jake whispering, "Watch this, y'all." Then it cut to me walking slowly across the backyard. And then, right as I stumbled, a loud slapstick sound effect played over the image, and text popped up on the screen. "Grandpa down. Yat funny fall, boomers belike, and rip bozo." The comments scrolled endlessly. People laughing, calling me a legend, calling Jake a genius. Some said I looked drunk. Others said I faked it. One said, "Somebody get this man life alert," with crying emojis. Another just said, "Bro, let him die for clout." I couldn't finish reading. I shut the tablet and placed it face down on the table. For a long time I sat there, staring out the window, numb. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not sadness, not even shame. It was something more animal, more primal. Humiliation. The kind that gets under your skin and burns hot. Like you've been stripped naked and left standing in front of a crowd that's howling with laughter. And all you can do is stand there and take it. It wasn't just the fall. It was how Jake had filmed it, edited it, packaged it, and offered it to the world. Like a party favor. And the world, God help me, the world ate it up. They devoured my pain and spat it back out in jokes and memes and share buttons. My body ached from the fall, but my spirit ached more. That night I called Jake. He didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. I left a message. "Jake, I saw the video. Please call me back." I tried to keep my voice steady, but I could hear the crack in it. That unmistakable tremor of someone trying not to break. No response. The next morning, I called Elise. She picked up on the second ring. "Hi, Dad," she said, her voice too bright, rehearsed. "Is everything okay?" I asked her if she'd seen Jake's video. There was a pause, just long enough to give her away. Then she sighed. "Yes, Dad. I saw it. Look, I know it's a little dramatic, but it's just a video. Jake didn't mean anything by it. He's just trying to make people laugh. It's what he does. You were trending yesterday, you know that? You were on BuzzFeed. That's huge." She said it like I'd won a medal. "Trending?" I repeated, stunned. "Do you understand what that video is? He filmed me getting hurt. He put it online. People are laughing at me." "No, Dad," she said, her tone flattening. They're laughing with you. There's a difference. Don't be so sensitive." I hung up without saying goodbye. I didn't want to hear the rest of what she had to say. I couldn't bear it. Not after everything. I'd given Jake rides when he was a boy. Bought him birthday presents when his father forgot. Taught him how to hold a hammer and fix a leaky faucet. I had sat through endless rambling about anime and internet jokes I didn't understand just so he would feel heard. And now, he had offered me to the internet like a sacrifice, and his mother, my daughter, defended him. I felt like a fool. Worse than that, I felt discarded, like I was no longer a person to them, just a prop, a punchline. The days that followed were surreal. I couldn't go outside without feeling eyes on me. One of the paper boys asked if he could take a selfie. A clerk at the grocery store said, "Don't fall on me, Grandpa. I ain't got insurance." Then laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. Even my mailman, always quiet and polite, smirked as he handed me a bundle of envelopes and said, "Internet's got you now, Mr. Pierce." I stopped going out. I closed the curtains, turned off the porch light. I unplugged the landline because reporters started calling, actual reporters, asking if I'd do a follow-up or maybe a reaction video. One guy offered $500 if I'd reenact the fall for a segment on viral boomers. $500 to relive the moment my body betrayed me and my family laughed. I didn't answer him. I just sat there in the dark, listening to the hollow ticking of the kitchen clock, wondering how the world had become so cruel, so loud, and so devoid of shame. Eventually, I got a message from Jake. Not a call, not a visit. A message. Hey, Gramps, chill out. It's just a joke. You're famous now. You should be thanking me. Thanking him. That's when I knew something had broken that couldn't be fixed. I didn't reply. I didn't even delete the message. I let it sit there, untouched, like a crack in the wall you're too tired to patch, a reminder that the damage is done, and pretending it's not there won't make it go away. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on the edge of my bed staring at the faded photograph of Marlene on the nightstand, her smile frozen in a time when people didn't film each other falling down for laughs. I whispered into the dark, "I miss you." And in the silence that followed, I wondered what she would have said, what she would have done. Probably something kinder than what I was about to do. But sometimes even an old man has to draw a line. Even an old man gets tired of being laughed at. The thing about humiliation is that it doesn't just happen in the moment. It lingers. It sinks into your skin and changes the way you see everything. Your home, your family, your face in the mirror. That week, after the video went viral, I found myself walking differently, slower even than before. Cautious not because of my hip, but because I was afraid of falling again. Not just physically, but symbolically, publicly. Every time I moved, I imagined someone watching, filming, laughing. I felt like a character in a bad sitcom, whose only purpose was to get a laugh by slipping on a banana peel. It was absurd. I was a man who had worked 38 years as a steel accountant, paid off his mortgage, raised a daughter, buried a wife, and now I was the butt of a joke I never asked to be in. That realization didn't just sit with me, it hollowed me. 2 days later, Jake came back. I heard his car pull up in the driveway around noon. I didn't go to greet him. I stayed in my chair, staring at the black screen of the turned-off TV. He knocked once, then let himself in with the key I'd given him years ago, back when he was still in high school, and I thought trust was something permanent. "Gramps," he called, his voice too cheerful. "I brought tacos." I didn't respond. He walked into the living room, holding a paper bag, still smiling, like we were on good terms. "You mad or something?" he asked, setting the bag down on the coffee table. I turned my head slowly. "You posted that video without asking me." He rolled his eyes. "Gramps, come on. It was hilarious. Everyone loved it. You were trending for 3 days straight. Even Cardi B commented on it." I stared at him. "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" He shrugged and unwrapped a taco for himself, biting into it with loud, smacking enthusiasm. "You just don't get the internet. It's not that deep. People laugh, then they move on. It's not personal." But it was personal. It was my body, my pain, my fall. It was the way he angled the camera to capture the stumble just right. The way he edited it to play in slow motion, then reversed it for a second laugh. It was the way he monetized it, put in ads, made shirts with my face on them. "Boomer down," the shirt read. He hadn't told me about that, of course. I found out when a stranger emailed me, asking if they could send me one for a signature. "You made merchandise?" I asked him now. He smirked. "It's just business, Gramps. People love it. I've already made close to $1,000. I was going to give you a cut. Chill." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a crumpled envelope. "Here, $100? Just for being a good sport." He placed it on the table like a tip, then leaned back and went back to his taco. I didn't touch the envelope. I didn't touch the food. I didn't speak. I just looked at this boy. This boy I had once carried on my shoulders, once rocked to sleep during storms. And I realized that whatever connection we once had was gone. Maybe it had eroded slowly over the years. Maybe it had died with Marlene, or maybe it had never been real to begin with. I don't know. But in that moment, looking at his casual disregard, his smug little smile, I felt something inside me shift. Not just disappointment, not even anger. Something colder. Something final. "You need to take the video down," I said, finally. Jake raised his eyebrows. "Why? It's already out there." "Taking it down won't change anything. Besides, people have already downloaded it. It's not going away." He wasn't wrong. That was the worst part. The genie was out of the bottle, and no matter how tightly I tried to close the lid, my fall would still exist somewhere, on someone's phone, on a reaction channel, on a meme page. It would be played in group chats and late-night talk shows. My stumble, my pain, my face twisted in confusion. That was out there now, forever. He left soon after, muttering something about boomer rage, and saying I needed to get over myself. When the door closed behind him, I stood up slowly, every joint complaining. I went to the hallway, opened the closet, and took out the wooden cane Marlene had carved my initials into. Then I walked to the front door and locked it from the inside. I removed Jake's spare key from the hook and slid it into a drawer he wouldn't find. That small act felt like reclaiming a tiny sliver of dignity. But the fallout didn't stop there. The next morning, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a printed screenshot of the video with a handwritten note, "LOL, hope you fall again, old man." No signature, no explanation. Just cruelty on paper. I threw it away, but the words stayed with me. I couldn't stop imagining the kind of person who would send such a thing. A kid, maybe. Or worse, an adult. I started checking the mailbox nervously every day, scanning the street for unfamiliar cars. I began double-locking the door at night. Something I hadn't done since the 80s. The world outside didn't feel safe anymore. Not just physically, but morally. It was like the ground had shifted beneath me, and I no longer understood the rules. 3 days later, Elise showed up. She called ahead this time. Said she wanted to check in. When she arrived, she brought a pie from the bakery I liked and a strained smile. "Dad," she said, setting the pie on the counter, "we need to talk." I nodded. I knew what was coming. "Jake told me you're upset. Look, I know he should have asked. I told him that. But he didn't mean harm. He's just trying to get by. Times are hard for kids these days. No jobs, no prospects. He's building something, and this video gave him a real boost." I stared at her, disbelief mounting. "A boost," I repeated. "He filmed me falling. You've seen the comments." She waved a hand. "You can't take those seriously. The internet isn't real life. People say things they don't mean." "It's real enough to ruin someone's dignity," I replied. "He turned me into a joke, Elise, and you're defending him." "I'm not defending," she said. "I'm explaining. You always said we have to adapt. Well, this is the world now. Everything's content." That word, content, it made me sick. As if life was no longer about living, but about performing, curating, editing pain into punchlines. I shook my head slowly. "If this is the world," I said, "then maybe I don't belong in it anymore." Elise sighed and took a seat, placing her hand over mine. "Dad, don't say things like that. You know we love you." "Do you?" I asked quietly. Because love doesn't look like this. She didn't have an answer. She stayed for an hour, tried to make small talk, asked about my blood pressure, reminded me to refill my prescriptions. But the warmth between us was gone. The air was cold, clinical. She left with another strained smile, promising to talk to Jake and make things right. But I knew she wouldn't. And even if she did, some things can't be unbroken. That night, I opened the drawer beside the couch and pulled out the old photo albums. I flipped through them, slowly, page by page. Marlene in her garden hat smiling under the sunflowers. Elise, at 9, holding a birthday balloon bigger than her head. Jake as a baby, asleep in my arms, mouth open, drool on my collar. I stared at that photo for a long time. What happened to that boy? What happened to all of us? Outside, the wind picked up. The branches tapped the window like fingers. I closed the album and set it gently back in the drawer. I knew the worst hadn't happened yet, but it was coming. I could feel it like a storm on the edge of the horizon, waiting for the right moment to strike. It wasn't until the segment aired on national television that I realized the full scale of the damage. That evening, I had dozed off in the armchair after dinner, the TV still on in the background, humming with noise I no longer paid much attention to. I woke up to the sound of applause, canned and soulless, followed by the host's voice, laughing. Now this one had us in stitches all week. Meet the grandpa who took a tumble. And the internet by storm. I opened my eyes and turned toward the screen just as they played it. Again, the same clip of me falling, this time with audience laughter added for effect, slowed down and replayed with exaggerated zooms. The host cackled, slapped his desk, then looked into the camera and said, "Get this guy a helmet." The audience roared. Then he added, "Don't worry, folks, he's okay." His grandson says he gave him permission. I sat frozen, the warmth draining from my face. I hadn't given anyone permission. And yet, there I was, reduced to a gag, beamed into millions of homes under false pretenses. The phone rang 5 minutes later. It was my old friend Walter, who I hadn't spoken to in months. "Arlo," he said, his voice unsure. "Was that you?" I said yes quietly, and he went silent for a moment. Then awkwardly, he asked if I was okay. I told him I was fine. I lied. I told him it wasn't a big deal. I lied again. After we hung up, I sat alone in the dark, the television still glowing in the corner, showing ads for energy drinks and online casinos. I didn't turn it off. I just stared at it like someone watching their own trial verdict being read. For the first time in my life, I felt truly powerless, not just old, not just out of step, but objectified. My body, my age, my weakness turned into currency. And the ones who did it were my own blood. Later that night, I checked Jake's TikTok again, against my better judgment. The video had hit 15 million views. The comments were worse than before, more creative in their cruelty. People had made duets, other kids filming themselves pretending to be me, falling in slow motion, adding fake groans. One of them used a filter to make their face look wrinkled. "Tag your boomer," it said. I saw that Jake had posted another video, a follow-up. In it, he talked about how grateful he was for the support, how his grandpa was totally cool with it, and how they were thinking about starting a podcast together. That last part nearly made me throw the tablet across the room. We hadn't spoken since the taco visit. He hadn't even texted. He'd fabricated an entire relationship for clout. And people believed him. They showered him with praise. "Wholesome," one comment read. "This kid really loves his grandpa." I couldn't sleep. I got out of bed, walked the house slowly, my cane tapping like a metronome in the silence. I passed the dining room where Marlene's portrait hung and paused. Her eyes were gentle, knowing. She used to tell me I was too soft on Elise, too indulgent with Jake. I didn't listen. I thought love meant saying yes, letting go. But now I wasn't sure what I'd taught them, or what kind of man I'd allowed Jake to become. The next morning, I called Elise again. She answered on speaker, her voice distracted. Children yelling in the background. "Dad, I can't really talk," she said. "The twins have a recital and Jake's dealing with a brand deal issue." I interrupted her. "I saw the segment on TV." Silence. Then, "Oh." I waited. She didn't offer anything else. "They said I gave permission." "I know," she said finally. "Jake thought it would calm people down. There were some complaints about exploiting elders. He said saying you approved would help." "And you agreed to that?" "Dad," she sighed, "this is how the world works now. You go viral, there's attention, people want a narrative. Jake was trying to protect you." I felt my breath catch. "Protect me? By lying?" "By softening the story," she said. "Anyway, what does it matter? No one's laughing at you personally. They're laughing at the fall. It's just a moment. And honestly, you're kind of famous now." She laughed like that was supposed to be a gift. I hung up. I couldn't listen anymore. I stood at the window, staring out at the yard where the fall had happened. I remembered every detail now. The crunch of gravel, the jolt in my side, the sun in my eyes. But more than that, I remembered the look on Jake's face right after. Not concern, not fear, but glee, excitement. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just insensitivity. It was opportunism. Calculated, rehearsed, cruel. And somewhere, buried in my stomach like a stone, I began to feel something I hadn't felt since I was a boy in South Dakota, standing up to a bully twice my size. Resolve. 3 days after the television segment aired, the letters started arriving. At first, they came one by one, sloppily addressed envelopes shoved through the mail slot with no return address. Then came the emails, somehow routed through a decades-old AOL account I rarely used. I didn't know how these people had found my information. Perhaps Jake had mentioned my full name in one of his live streams, or perhaps someone had done a reverse search on public records, but however they'd gotten it, they came without hesitation. Most of them were short, anonymous, cruel. "Die slower. Stay down, old man. Hope your next fall is fatal." Some included screenshots of me mid-fall, photoshopped into absurd scenarios. On the moon, in a wrestling ring, riding a banana. Others were more insidious, pretending to be sympathetic only to pivot into mockery. "As a geriatric nurse, I see falls all the time. Yours was the funniest yet." One message stood out, a direct message sent through a platform I didn't even recognize. It read, "I used to love my grandpa. Then I saw you and remembered how weak and pathetic old people are. Thank you for the clarity." That one sat with me in a way the others didn't. I tried to delete it and found I couldn't. I didn't know how. I called the police thinking maybe they could help, or at least file a report. A polite but distracted young man on the phone told me that unless there were physical threats or stalking, nothing could be done. "Block them," he said. "Try changing your contact info," as if erasing a life's worth of identity was as simple as clicking log out. I hung up and sat in silence. The house felt different now, smaller, tainted. Every room carried an echo of that video. Every object another reminder that I had been digitally stripped of my dignity and handed to a world that didn't know my name but felt entitled to laugh at my body. That night, I dreamt of Marlene. In the dream, she was sitting in the garden, pruning her roses, but every time I tried to walk toward her, I stumbled. Over and over again, I fell into dirt, into thorns, into silence. When I woke up, there were tears on my cheeks. I hadn't cried in years. I didn't think I still could. Later that week, I received a phone call from a woman named Lynn Hartley, a social worker attached to the Missouri Department of Adult Protective Services. She said she had received a report, anonymous, but concerning, that suggested I might be experiencing confusion, disorientation, possible early-onset dementia, and an inability to care for myself. I felt something twist in my stomach. I asked her who had submitted the report. She said she couldn't disclose that. I asked what evidence there was. She said the video had raised red flags, as had some of the social media discourse. I sat there stunned, holding the receiver, my mouth dry. "Mr. Pierce," she said, "this doesn't mean anything's been decided. We just need to conduct a wellness check, perhaps schedule an evaluation." "It's routine." After we hung up, I sat in the kitchen, staring at the floor tiles Marlene had chosen years ago. Blue and white, with a faded floral pattern. I imagined her here, placing her teacup gently on the counter, humming some forgotten song, unaware of the world our family would become. I picked up the phone and called Elise. She answered quickly this time. "Dad, I was just about to call you." Her tone was too smooth, too prepared. I asked if she had anything to do with the social worker. She hesitated. "Jake was worried. You've been acting strangely, not answering calls. We just want to make sure you're safe." "Safe from what?" I asked. "From being left alone?" "From hurting yourself," she said. "From falling again. You're not as strong as you used to be." The cruelty of it was so casual, like she was discussing lawn maintenance. "So you want me institutionalized?" I said. "You want them to take control?" "No, Dad," she insisted. "We just want what's best. Maybe you'd be more comfortable in a facility. One with staff. You could meet other people your age. You wouldn't be so combative." "I want you to listen to me carefully," I said, my voice trembling. "If you or Jake attempt anything legal, if you try to have me declared incompetent, I will fight it. I may be old, but I'm not gone. Not yet." She sighed. "Dad, don't be dramatic. This isn't about power. It's about love." "Love doesn't look like this," I replied. "And if it does, I want no part of it." I called my doctor the next day and scheduled a cognitive exam, just to be sure, just to have something on record. He ran the test gently, without condescension, and afterward he looked me in the eye and said, "Arlo, your memory's better than mine. You're sharp, you're angry, and rightly so, but you are not impaired." I asked him to write it down, to notarize it. He did. A week later, I changed my phone number, deleted my old email, and shut down the landline. The silence was instant and shocking. Like pulling the plug on a machine that had been buzzing for so long, I'd forgotten it wasn't supposed to. I started going to the library again. I opened a new bank account at a credit union across town under a variation of my middle name. I spoke to a lawyer, one of Walter's old contacts, and asked what my rights were if my family attempted legal control. He was kind, efficient. "You'd be surprised how often this happens," he said. "Seniors being framed as unstable so someone can access their accounts. It's cruel, but common." He drew up documents. I signed them all. But the true betrayal came not from the letters or the calls or even the welfare check. It came when I discovered, entirely by accident, that Jake had sold the rights to the video. I was reading an article online about digital ethics, just passing time, when a sidebar ad popped up for a streaming platform. "Watch the best viral moments of the year," it said. And there I was, again, my face frozen mid-fall, now plastered across a thumbnail like a branding iron. I clicked, heart pounding, and was taken to a platform I'd never heard of. The video played, ad-free, high definition, with added commentary. A smug young host laughed over my fall. "We call this one the Golden Grandpa," he said. 10 out of 10 would trip again. I scrolled down and found a note. Video licensed by creator Jake T. Pierce. Licensed. He had sold me. My body. My moment of pain. Packaged it. Profited from it. I called him. This time he answered. "Gramps," he said, like nothing had changed. "You sold the video," I said. There was a pause. Then, "Yeah. So, I needed the money. It's not like you were using it." Using it. He spoke of my suffering as if it were a tool, a shovel, a bus pass. "You lied to people. You said I gave permission," he laughed. "It's just content. No one cares. You don't get it." He was right. I didn't get it. And I didn't want to. "I want you to take it down. All of it." "Can't," he said. "It's licensed. It's out of my hands. You should just enjoy it. You're basically a celebrity now." There was nothing left to say. I hung up. That night, I packed a bag. Just the essentials. My ID, my pension card, a few changes of clothes. The photo of Marlene from our 25th anniversary. I left the house just before dawn and drove my old Buick to a motel on the edge of town, paid in cash, checked in under a different name. That evening, I watched the sunset from a plastic chair outside the motel room, thinking, this is what it's come to. An old man, hiding from his own family, just to feel like a person again. But I wasn't running. Not really. I was planning. And when I returned, it wouldn't be as the joke they thought I was. It would be as the reckoning they never saw coming. I returned to my house 5 days later, just before dawn, when the sky was still gray and uncertain, the kind of quiet hour when even the birds hesitate to begin singing. The streets were empty, the neighborhood asleep, and I parked the car 2 blocks away so no one would notice I had returned. My steps were measured as I walked up the path toward my own front door. A door I had once painted blue with Marlene on a windy spring afternoon, and slid the key in slowly, half expecting something to have changed in my absence. Nothing had. Everything was exactly where I left it, except colder. Even the dust seemed more deliberate, like the house had been holding its breath. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the kitchen and waited, thinking through every word I would say and every step I would take. This wasn't a moment for fury. Fury was a luxury of the young, of the impulsive. No, this was a time for precision, for clarity, for consequence. If my own family had turned my body into a transaction, then I would answer them not with a scream, but with a document. Not with tears, but with a signature. At 9 a.m. sharp, I walked into the office of Wallace and Breyer, attorneys at law, a place I hadn't visited in over a decade. Last time for Marlene's will, Mr. Breyer, an older man now nearing retirement himself, still remembered me, still clasped my hand like it meant something. I told him everything. No exaggerations, no embellishments, just the facts as they unfolded. The video, the merchandising, the lies, the fabricated consent, the attempt to frame me as incompetent, the licensing deal Jake had signed without my knowledge. He listened in silence, making notes on a yellow pad, nodding occasionally, his brow furrowing at each new detail. When I finished, he set down the pen, folded his hands, and said, "Mr. Pierce, this is a case of reputational harm, unauthorized commercial use of your likeness, and if we want to be thorough, elder abuse. The evidence you've collected, screenshots, emails, legal documents, all of it builds a credible claim. But the question is, what do you want to happen? I looked him directly in the eye. I want to end their access to me. I want to end their power. And I want the world to see that I was never part of the joke. I was the one paying the price. We began with a cease and desist letter addressed to the content platform and to Jake himself, demanding the removal of all monetized videos using my image or physical likeness, citing lack of consent and emotional distress. We filed paperwork to revoke Jake's limited access to my financial records, something Elise had set up without my full understanding years ago under the guise of emergency management. Then, we initiated a petition to open a civil case for damages, incurred through unauthorized exploitation of my image, naming both Jake and Elise as co-defendants, arguing that Elise had enabled and profited from the situation directly or through complicity. Lastly, we prepared an affidavit reaffirming my mental and physical competence, supported by my doctor's recent evaluation, to preempt any countersuit or guardianship claim. 2 days later, Jake showed up at my house. He didn't knock, he banged. I heard him from the kitchen shouting through the door, his voice sharp with panic. "Gramps, open the door! What the hell did you do? Are you crazy? I'm getting emails from lawyers. You're ruining my brand." I didn't answer. I sat still at the table, the kettle whistling on the stove like a soundtrack. He kept banging. "You're making a mistake. I didn't do anything wrong. People loved the video. I made you famous." I stood up slowly, walked to the door, and opened it just enough to see his face, red, wild-eyed, his phone still in his hand. "You betrayed me," I said calmly. "You didn't ask. You didn't care. And now there are consequences." He stepped forward like he might try to push past me, but I raised my cane just slightly, enough to remind him this was still my home. "You think this is going to fix anything?" he spat. "You're going to die alone, old man. That's what this gets you, nothing." I smiled. "I've had nothing for years, Jake. Nothing but silence. You gave me noise. Now I'm giving you silence back." Then I closed the door. That evening, I received a call from Elise. Her voice was low, trembling. "Dad, I just got served. You're suing us?" I answered without hesitation. "I am." She was silent for a long time. Then, "How could you do this to your own daughter?" I took a breath, steady. "You stopped being my daughter when you started covering for him. When you let them mock me, sell me, lie about me. Blood isn't loyalty, Elise. You taught me that." Her voice cracked. "I never wanted to hurt you." You thought I was weak," I said. "You thought you could use me without pushback. You were wrong." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply hung up. Over the next week, the internet, predictably, turned. News spread quickly. A local paper picked up the story, then a national one. "Viral Grandpa Fights Back," the headline read. "Elderly man sues influencer grandson over exploitation." The article quoted my lawyer, cited legal precedent, included screenshots of the original video and the cease and desist. Suddenly, the tone shifted. The public that had once laughed now turned curious, then concerned. Comments began to appear under Jake's videos. "This isn't funny anymore." "Wait, did your grandpa even agree to this?" "Man, this is messed up." Sponsors dropped him. Collaborators deleted their duets. His follower count plummeted. A few old friends reached out to me, quietly, respectfully, to say they'd always wondered whether it was staged. I didn't answer most of them. I didn't need validation. I needed truth. When the court date arrived, I wore my best suit. Gray wool, a little outdated, but clean, pressed, dignified. I sat beside my attorney and watched as Jake shuffled in, no longer confident, no longer smirking. Just a boy, unmasked. Elise sat behind him, her face pale, her hands shaking. I didn't look at her. When the judge asked if I had anything to say, I stood and spoke simply. My name is Arlo Pierce. I'm 82. I served my country, paid my taxes, buried my wife, and raised a family. I am not a punchline. I am not content. And I am not disposable. The courtroom was quiet. The silence, for once, was mine. The case settled quietly out of court 3 weeks later. Jake, through his newly appointed legal counsel, agreed to remove all videos and promotional materials featuring my image, and to relinquish any future monetization rights connected to the so-called fall clip. The platform itself issued a public apology on its site, citing a lapse in ethical oversight, and confirming they would be overhauling their internal review process for viral content involving non-consenting individuals. As part of the agreement, Jake paid a modest but symbolic sum in damages, a figure that mattered less for its monetary value, and more because it had to come from his own pocket. No crowdfunding, no sponsors, no parental bailout. Just him, confronted for the first time in his life with the full weight of responsibility. Elise sent one final letter, not handwritten, not signed. Just a formal statement expressing regret for any perceived harm and confirming she would no longer attempt to contact me. I read it once, then burned it in the kitchen sink with a long match, watching the page curl in on itself until all that remained was smoke and black ash in the porcelain basin. After the storm passed, the silence returned. But this time it felt different. It wasn't the heavy, hollow silence of isolation, but something cleaner, emptier in a way that invited breath. I began rising earlier again, making stronger coffee, walking more steadily on the path behind the house. I patched a loose railing by the porch myself, tightening the bolts with a kind of satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. I started going to the library every Tuesday. Not just for the books, but to talk with the librarian, a widow named Claire, who had a calm voice and remembered my name each time. She asked about Marlene once, and I told her about our wedding day in 1963, about how the priest mispronounced my name, and she laughed so hard she dropped the bouquet. Claire didn't interrupt. She just listened, the way people used to when stories still meant something. I never reconnected with Jake or Elise. I didn't seek revenge beyond what had already passed through the system. I didn't reply to Jake's final message, a stilted, half-hearted, "Hope you're doing okay," sent months later without warmth, without apology. I simply deleted it. Whatever bridge had once connected us was long burned, and I had no interest in rebuilding it out of ash and memory. Some losses, I've come to believe, must remain losses. Not all pain deserves closure. Some must simply be named, endured, and released. But not all endings are empty. One afternoon, while reading in the park, I was approached by a young man, mid-20s, nervous posture, holding a clipboard. He asked if I was Arlo Pierce. I said yes, cautiously. He smiled and told me he was working with an advocacy group that had read about my case. "You're kind of a hero to some folks," he said, and before I could correct him, he continued, "My grandfather went through something similar. Not viral, but humiliating. No one took it seriously. But after your story made the news, we had a meeting at my college about digital consent. We used your name, your face, people listened. I didn't know what to say, so I said thank you." He gave me a card and walked away. Later that week, I visited Marlene's grave for the first time in months. I brought white lilies, her favorite, and stood quietly under the old elm tree that shaded her headstone. I told her everything, not because she needed to know, but because I needed to say it. About the fall, the betrayal, the silence that became noise, and then silence again. About the strange world we now lived in, where pain could be currency, and shame could be framed for entertainment. I told her about the boy with the clipboard, and how maybe in some strange way, it mattered that I stood up, even if I had stood up alone. And when I finished, I didn't cry. I just stood there, letting the wind touch my face, feeling more human than I had in years. That night back home, I made myself a small dinner. Nothing fancy, just soup and bread, and sat at the table not watching television, not checking the internet, just sitting, breathing, being. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for anything. I wasn't bracing. I wasn't ashamed. I was just a man in his own home, no longer afraid to fall.